"You are a disgusting man, Frank," Brenda May announced, her voice cutting through the soft murmur of the anniversary dinner crowd. A fork clattered onto a plate at a nearby table. My breath hitched, not from shock, but from the sudden, cold clarity. She glanced at my expression, a flicker of something sharp in her eyes. "Don't pretend you don't know why." The anniversary dinner, meant for celebration at the Gilded Spoon, had soured into something sharp and metallic. Brenda May's words hung in the air, a public accusation delivered with practiced calm. Around us, the polite hum of conversations had stalled, replaced by the clinking of silverware and an uncomfortable quiet. I watched her posture still, her gaze unwavering. She wore the pearl necklace I had given her for our 10th, a strand of white against the dark silk of her dress. My mind, accustomed to sifting through evidence and testimony, began to work. Pieces, scattered and seemingly unrelated, started to connect. Disgusting. The word lodged itself, not as an insult, but as a key. A prosecutor for 2 decades, I understood the weight of intent behind such a public declaration. It was not spontaneous. It was strategic. Just last week, the Leo Garcia file had crossed my desk. Garcia, a low-level aide, was the critical missing witness in the Sterling corruption case. The very case Brenda May was defending for Charles Sterling, the state assemblyman. Sterling's nuanced approach to politics, as Brenda May often called it, was more accurately described as a web of bribes and backroom deals. Garcia had vanished, leaving behind only rumors of a distraught daughter and a cryptic note. I offered her a tight smile, the kind I reserve for uncooperative witnesses. "Brenda May, perhaps this is a discussion better had in the privacy of our home." My voice was low, even, designed to pull her from the public stage she had created. The waiter, a young man with anxious eyes, hovered nearby, uncertain if he should approach our table. She dismissed my suggestion with a soft wave of her hand. "No, Frank. Your morality, your black and white view of the world, it's tiresome. Charles Sterling understands how things work, how compromises are made for the greater good." She picked up her wine glass, her fingers slender and steady, a picture of grace amidst the wreckage she had caused. "The greater good," I echoed, my eyes on her. "Is that what you call a witness disappearing?" A key witness, Leo Garcia, the man who could tie Sterling directly to the campaign finance fraud. I leaned slightly forward, keeping my voice conversational, as if discussing the weather. Was he collateral damage in Sterling's nuanced approach, Brenda May? Or was he merely inconvenient? Her gaze held mine for a long moment, then drifted past my shoulder to the wall behind me. The silence stretched, an answer more damning than any confession. Her lips, usually quick with a retort, remained closed. That was it. The puzzle clicked into place. The accusation of disgusting was a shield, a preemptive strike, designed to throw me off balance, to make me doubt myself while she covered her tracks. We left the restaurant. The air outside was cold, sharp with the scent of late autumn leaves and exhaust fumes. Not a word was exchanged between the valet and me, nor between Brenda May and the hostess. The drive home was a tunnel of silence, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional swish of tires on wet pavement. The unspoken accusations in the car were louder than any shouts. I drove, my hands tight on the wheel. "How did you know about Leo Garcia's daughter? Her immigration status? The pressure points Sterling could exploit?" I kept my eyes on the road, watching the white lines disappear under the hood. "That information was highly classified, not even in my public files." She looked out the window, her profile etched against the passing street lights. "You talk in your sleep, Frank," she said, her voice soft, devoid of any remorse. "For years you've talked, little details, little anxieties, things that a prosecutor carries home, things he can't let go of even when he's resting." A cold knot tightened in my gut. Not just Leo Garcia, not just Sterling. Years. She had been listening, cataloging, gathering intelligence from my unconscious mind, mining my vulnerabilities for her clients, for her own ambition. The woman beside me, my wife for 15 years, had treated our marriage as a source of information, a strategic advantage. I pulled into the driveway, cutting the engine. The sudden quiet was deafening. I turned to her. "You blackmailed him, didn't you? You used his daughter's status to get him to disappear, to protect your client. My voice was flat, stripped of emotion, a statement of fact rather than a question. She met my gaze, a hint of steel in her eyes. I protected my client, Frank. That is my job. Unlike you, I understand that sometimes the law is merely a suggestion, a malleable tool. I got out of the car, walked around, and opened her door, a gesture of politeness ingrained from a different life. She stepped out onto the cold concrete. Politics doesn't exempt you from the law, Brenda May, I said, my voice low, steady. You should know that, being married to me. She looked at me then, her head tilted slightly, a challenge in her expression. Is that a threat, Frank? You'd prosecute your own wife? I held her gaze, my breath misting in the cold air. No, Brenda May, she said, the words falling like ice chips. It's a promise. 15 years earlier, I'd met Brenda May at a noisy campaign gala. The air was thick with ambition and cheap perfume. I was a rising star in the prosecutor's office, fresh off a high-profile conviction. She was working for the opposition, a savvy political operative, sharp-edged and articulate, her eyes missing nothing. She leaned against the bar, a glass of something clear in her hand, watching the room with a calculating gaze that I, then, found intriguing. You're the DA's golden boy, aren't you? She'd asked, turning to me, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. Frank Holloway, I've read your briefs, very moral, very absolute. I'd returned her smile. And you, Brenda May Jenkins, are the architect of narratives, I hear, shading the truth until it fits the desired picture. Truth is subjective, Frank, she'd replied, taking a sip of her drink. Justice is a story told by the victor. You believe in guilt or innocence. I believe in effective persuasion, in control of the message. Our initial banter was a clash of ideologies, a dance between my clear-cut world of evidence and her fluid realm of perception. Yet something undeniable sparked between us. Maybe it was the opposing forces, the challenge of it. We fell in love. Our wedding was a blend of traditional hymns and modern vows, a compromise that, for a time, felt perfectly balanced. On our wedding night in the hushed quiet of a small B&B outside of Traverse City, I remember talking, fueled by champagne and a potent mix of professional satisfaction and personal joy. I spoke of my passion for justice, for the intricate dance of evidence in a courtroom, for the profound satisfaction of watching truth emerge from chaos. I described the meticulous work, the quiet dedication, the long nights spent dissecting facts until a clear picture formed. She listened, her head resting on my shoulder, her expression unreadable in the dim light. When I finished, a comfortable silence settled. Then she lifted her head, her eyes catching mine. You'd be terrifying as an enemy, Frank, she'd said, her voice soft, almost a whisper. I'd laughed, pulling her closer, dismissing it as a jest. Now the memory of her words felt like a chill, a premonition I had been too naive to heed. She hadn't been joking. She had been assessing. The following morning, I arrived at my office well before dawn. The fluorescent lights hummed with an unnatural brightness, casting long shadows across the empty cubicles. My secretary, Sarah, a woman who had seen everything in her 30 years with the DA's office, arrived shortly after 7. She simply nodded when she saw me, her expression unreadable. Sarah knew the rhythms of this building, and an early Frank Holloway meant trouble brewing. Morning, Frank, she said, her voice low as she set her coffee mug on her desk. Coffee's fresh. Thanks, Sarah, I replied, not looking up from the screen. Could you pull all financial records for Holloway & Associates, my personal accounts, and cross-reference them with any donations or expenditures connected to the Charles Sterling campaign from the last 5 years? Also, background on Meridian Consulting and any other firms associated with Brenda May's practice. My request was a precise list, delivered without emotion. Sarah didn't ask why. She simply typed a few notes on her pad, her movements efficient. I'll get on it, Frank, she said, her voice flat, acknowledging the gravity of the request without comment. I began my meticulous search, clicking through the digital files of the Sterling campaign. I was looking for patterns, for the unique fingerprints Brenda May left on her clients' affairs. She was too smart to leave direct traces, but she operated through layers, shell companies, and seemingly legitimate consulting fees. The Sterling case, already riddled with complex financial maneuvers, suddenly felt like a map, and I was tracing the routes I knew she would take. An hour later, Greg Johnson, my colleague and friend, appeared in the doorway of my office, a styrofoam cup of coffee in his hand. He stopped, leaned against the frame, and took a slow sip. "Rough night, Frank," he observed, his eyes scanning my tired face, the rumpled shirt. "You look like hell." I gestured to the screen where I had isolated a series of transactions. "Take a look at this, Greg. Sterling's campaign finances, a shell company called Apex Solutions, funneling money into a network of other entities. And here I pointed to a specific line item, a substantial payment. Meridian Consulting, one of Brenda May's firms. They specialize in strategic political advising." The term hung heavy in the air. Greg leaned closer, his brow furrowed as he read the screen. His eyes, usually full of a casual warmth, hardened with understanding. He looked from the monitor to me, then back to the monitor. The implications were clear. "Frank," he said, his voice quiet, serious, "are you investigating your wife?" I met his gaze, my jaw tight. The question was direct, unsparing. "I'm investigating obstruction of justice, Greg," I replied, the words precise, leaving no room for doubt. "And she practically admitted to it last night." Greg stared at the screen, then at me, the weight of his question hanging between us. "Frank, you have to recuse yourself. This is a massive conflict. The optics alone could destroy your career, let alone the legal ramifications if this ever sees a courtroom." His voice was low, filled with genuine concern. We had worked together for over a decade. He knew my rules, my principles. "I'm following the evidence, Greg," I stated, my voice steady. "Not prosecuting my wife, not yet." The distinction, though thin, was crucial to me. "I'm building a case for obstruction of justice. If Brenda May's firm, Meridian Consulting, is involved in funneling illegal campaign contributions and silencing witnesses, then she is a material participant, regardless of our marriage certificate." I paused, looking him directly in the eye. "I need to build an undeniable case, one that stands on its own before this becomes undeniably about her." The truth was, I needed to know beyond a shadow of a doubt. For the next 3 weeks, my office became my sanctuary and my prison. I barely went home, showering at the small gym in the building, catching a few hours of sleep on the worn leather couch. My diet consisted of lukewarm coffee and whatever Sarah remembered to pick up from the deli. I immersed myself in the labyrinthine financial records, the intricate web of shell companies, and the shadowy flow of money. My world narrowed to lines on spreadsheets and dates on invoices. Brenda May noticed my absence, of course. A few terse texts. "Working late again?" Or "Everything all right, Frank?" I'd reply with vague assurances blaming the Sterling case, which was technically the truth. She seemed to interpret my intense focus as a familiar professional zeal, a trait she had once admired. She didn't probe further, not in the way a concerned spouse might, or perhaps she was simply waiting for me to make a mistake. One evening, my phone rang. It was Brenda May. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "Frank, I've reserved a table at the lake house for dinner on Friday. The annual Mayor's Charity Gala is coming up next week. It's important for appearances." She spoke as if nothing had changed, as if the anniversary dinner had been a bad dream we both chose to forget. The mention of appearances resonated. My duty as a prosecutor warred with the crumbling remnants of my marriage. I could feel the cold calculation behind her invitation, a desire to project normalcy, to control the narrative that we were a united front. Yet, I also knew the ruthless efficiency she brought to every case. I remembered her dissecting opponents, finding the smallest angle, twisting it until it served her purpose. She wasn't just manipulating public perception. She had manipulated my perception of our shared life, weaving a fiction of a happy, supportive marriage while gathering intelligence from my own bedside. The thought was a bitter pill. I paused, considering. "Friday sounds fine, Brenda May. I'll make it work." The public appearance, I realized, could also serve my purpose. To observe, to gather more fragments of her carefully constructed facade. "Good," she said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "I knew you wouldn't miss it. This Sterling case has you utterly consumed, doesn't it? You have that look, the one you get when you're about to corner your prey. Her words were a chilling echo of her past assessment, this time delivered with a strange undertone of pride, unaware that I was, in fact, hunting her. I studied her when I finally made it home that Friday evening. Over a quiet dinner, she spoke of her day, of client meetings and political maneuvers, her composure unwavering. Her eyes, cool and intelligent, held no trace of guilt or fear. This calm, calculating demeanor only reinforced my conviction. She wasn't just complicit, she was an architect. Her involvement ran deeper than I had initially suspected, woven into the very fabric of her professional identity. The next day, back in my office, the files spread out before me. I knew what I had to do. I had to escalate. I needed to move beyond suspicion and build an unassailable evidentiary chain. My focus sharpened on the specific financial channels that led directly to Meridian Consulting. Every dollar, every date, every signature had to be scrutinized. Greg walked in, a worried frown on his face. "Frank, you're going down a dangerous road. This could destroy everything you've built." I looked up from the glowing screen, my resolve hard and unyielding. "Some roads need to be traveled, Greg," I said, my voice flat, "regardless of the cost." The mayor's charity gala at the Grand Ballroom was a carefully orchestrated spectacle of influence and affluence. Frank and Brenda May moved through the opulent room, a practiced smile plastered on my face, my arm draped possessively around her waist. To any casual observer, we were the picture of a successful power couple, a prosecutor and a political consultant, navigating the social currents with ease. But beneath the surface, a cold war was raging. I engaged in polite conversation with city council members and local business magnates, my ears tuned for any stray whispers, any subtle shifts in allegiance around Charles Sterling's campaign. Most talked of fundraising successes, of Sterling's vision for the city. Brenda May, meanwhile, was a master. She worked the room like a conductor, her charm a polished shield, deflecting any potential scrutiny from her client with a practiced ease. She had a knack for making everyone feel important, for weaving connections out of thin air. Later, by the silent auction tables, I overheard a prominent real estate developer, Roger Thorne, chatting with a former judge. "Sterling's campaign certainly had some unexpected generosity come its way this quarter," Thorne remarked, adjusting his bow tie. "Quite the turnaround. Remarkable, really, how quickly things can shift." My eyebrow twitched. Unexpected generosity. The phrase settled in my mind, another piece in the growing mosaic of Sterling's illicit funding. Brenda May reappeared at my side, her smile unwavering. "Frank, darling, I want you to meet someone important." She steered me towards a group of people clustered near the stage. There, radiating self-assurance, stood Charles Sterling himself, his expensive suit impeccably tailored. The encounter was as awkward as I'd anticipated, a thinly veiled tension beneath polite greetings. "Charles, this is my husband, Frank Holloway," Brenda May said, her voice smooth. "Frank, Charles Sterling." Sterling extended a hand, his grip firm, his eyes holding mine with a politician's practiced intensity. "Prosecutor Holloway, I've heard much about you. Brenda May speaks highly of your dedication." He smiled, a flash of white teeth. "It's always good to have unwavering support. Wouldn't you agree?" He paused, his gaze flicking to Brenda May before settling back on me, a subtle emphasis on the unwavering support. Was it a subtle jab, a reference to Brenda May's loyalty to him, or a warning? Later, as I was making my way to the bar for a glass of water, a young journalist, fresh-faced but with sharp eyes, cornered me. "Prosecutor Holloway, I'm Sarah Chen from the Chronicle. There are some rumors circulating about the Sterling investigation. Allegations of aggressive tactics, perhaps even a potential conflict of interest, given your wife's involvement with the campaign. Any comment?" The question wasn't random. It was too precise, too direct. My gut tightened. Brenda May hadn't just been defending Sterling. She had already begun shaping a narrative against me. Her vast network of PR contacts, her mastery of perception, it was all being deployed. Her strategy was clear. Discredit me, paint me as overzealous, fueled by personal animosity, making any future prosecution look like a personal vendetta rather than a pursuit of justice. I offered the journalist a bland, professional response about adhering to due process and the integrity of the DA's office. But inside, I was already shifting gears. I wasn't just building a case against Sterling and Brenda May anymore. I was now fighting her public relations machine, a battle on two fronts. Back at the office the next morning, Greg looked grim. Frank, the DA's office is getting calls from the mayor's office, from Senator Evans' people. They're all asking about the Sterling investigation. Asking about you. His meaning was clear. Brenda May's allies were applying pressure, trying to get me pulled from the case. I sat at my desk, the fluorescent light humming, the ghost of Sterling's confident smile lingering in my mind. All right, I said, my voice calm. Draft a public statement. Something about upholding the law, pursuing justice without fear or favor, regardless of political connections or personal relationships. The words felt hollow even as I dictated them, but they were necessary. Then a new thought solidified. Greg, I need to bring in someone external, a financial auditor I can trust implicitly, someone with no ties to this office, no political allegiances, someone who won't buckle under pressure. The layers of the Sterling case, intertwined with Meridian Consulting, were too complex, too politically charged, to trust solely to internal resources. I needed a clean set of eyes. Later that evening, after another long day of sifting through financials, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Brenda May. No salutation, just 5 words, sharp as glass. You're playing a dangerous game, Frank. My public statement, emphasizing justice over political maneuvering, hit the local papers the next morning. The reactions were predictably mixed. Some editorials lauded the DA's office for its unwavering commitment to integrity. Others, clearly influenced by Brenda May's well-oiled PR machine, painted me as an overly zealous prosecutor, a single-minded ideologue out of touch with the practical realities of modern politics. The headlines were a stark reminder that even in law, perception was often a battlefield. Later that afternoon, a summons arrived from District Attorney Roy Campbell. His office was austere, the walls lined with framed commendations and legal degrees. Campbell, a man whose political instincts were as sharp as his legal mind, leaned back in his leather chair, his expression carefully neutral. Frank, he began, his voice smooth, we need to talk about the Sterling case and your enthusiasm. He paused, letting the implication hang. The mayor's office is concerned. Senator Evans called me personally. They feel this is becoming too aggressive, too personal perhaps. He didn't accuse directly, but the meaning was clear. He was worried about the optics, about the political fallout. Roy, I replied, my voice steady, I'm following the evidence. The preliminary findings strongly link Meridian Consulting, Brenda May's firm, directly to suspicious financial transactions benefiting Sterling's campaign. These aren't minor irregularities. These are significant sums moving through shell corporations, timed precisely with key moments in the campaign and with the disappearance of Leo Garcia. Greg, who had accompanied me, spoke up, his presence a quiet but firm support. The integrity of the evidence is solid, Roy. Frank isn't chasing shadows here. The paper trail is real. Campbell listened, his gaze shifting between us, weighing the political cost against the undeniable facts. He sighed. I appreciate your dedication, Frank, but you need to temper your approach. This office can only withstand so much political pressure. A prosecutor's career, after all, is a delicate thing. It was a subtle threat, a reminder of who held the reins. I held my ground. My approach is dictated by the facts, Roy, and the facts, in this case, lead directly to obstruction of justice. Back in my office, I pored over the auditor's initial report. The independent financial auditor, a meticulous man named David Miller, had found exactly what I suspected. A series of intricate money transfers, each designed to obscure the source, led to a network of shell corporations, all ultimately tied to Brenda May's consulting network. Then I saw it. The smoking gun, a substantial payment structured to appear as a legitimate consulting fee from Sterling's campaign to a small, obscure shell company, dated precisely to the day Leo Garcia had vanished from the public eye. This wasn't just for blackmail. This was a payment for sustained silence, for relocation, for ensuring Leo Garcia wouldn't just be quiet, but that he would be untraceable. The depth of her planning, the cold calculation, hit me with renewed force. "Greg," I called out, my voice tight with resolve, "prepare a warrant for Leo Garcia. We have a financial trail that will lead us directly to him." The workday ended, but my work did not. I was still sifting through the reports when my phone buzzed. A text from Brenda May. "Dinner at our place tonight, 7 p.m. It was a rare overture in our current Cold War, a sudden breaking of the silent tension. I knew this wasn't an olive branch. She was either cornered, sensing the net tightening, or she was planning a decisive counterattack. Her game was always strategic, always was calculated. I had to assume the latter. I agreed to the dinner, knowing this would be the final confrontation before legal action. The conversation in our living room tonight would be the last before the legal battle began. I spent the afternoon meticulously reviewing every piece of evidence, every detail, every possible angle. I was preparing for what I knew would be my toughest interrogation yet. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. I arrived home at precisely 7. The aroma of rosemary and roasted chicken filled the air, a domestic scene that felt utterly alien. Brenda May stood at the kitchen island, meticulously arranging a salad, her movements graceful and unhurried. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, a contrast to the gala dress, yet her posture remained impeccable. "Dinner's ready, Frank," she said, her voice even, as if this were just another Tuesday night. We sat at the dining room table, the polished wood reflecting the soft glow of the chandelier. The small talk was strained, a thin veneer over the chasm that had opened between us. She asked about my day, about the intricacies of the Sterling case. I gave vague, non-committal answers, observing her. Her composure was remarkable, her eyes calm, devoid of any tells. She ate with a delicate precision, cutting her chicken into small, even pieces. I decided to begin not as a husband seeking understanding, but as a prosecutor building a case. "Brenda May," I started, my voice level. "Let's talk about Meridian Consulting and Charles Sterling's campaign finances." She took a sip of water. "Frank, we've been over this. It's a consulting firm. We provide strategic advice, all legal." Her tone was dismissive, practiced. "Is that what you call a $250,000 payment routed through Apex Solutions to a holding company in Delaware, then back to Meridian Consulting, all within a 3-week period?" I laid out the first point, calmly, watching for a flicker. "Dated precisely to the week Leo Garcia went missing." She shrugged. "Circumstantial, political maneuvering. Every campaign has its intricate finances, Frank. You know how it works. You're just looking for ghosts." And the subsequent payment 2 days after Garcia's disappearance, structured as a legitimate consulting fee, but corresponding exactly to the expedited immigration approval for his daughter? I pressed, my voice unwavering. "A process that typically takes months, sometimes years, expedited within a week of that payment. That's not a ghost, Brenda May. That's a direct correlation." The mask slipped. A flash of anger, sharp and brief, distorted her features. Her fork clattered lightly against her plate. "And what if it was, Frank?" she countered, her voice now edged with contempt. "What if Sterling's vision for this city is more important than some abstract notion of justice for a minor aid? His policies will bring thousands of homes, revitalize neighborhoods. What is one man's family drama compared to that?" She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with a conviction that felt chilling. "I got the information from your sleep talk, Frank. Fragmented whispers. You worry, you fret, you spill details, and I listen. I put the pieces together. I leveraged my contacts in immigration, in the party. It wasn't hard. People want to be on the winning side." She spoke with a chilling pride, outlining her meticulous planning, her belief that she had covered her tracks so completely, she was untouchable. A profound sense of betrayal washed over me. Not a wave of emotion, but a cold, stark realization. This woman, the one I had loved, shared a life with, was a calculating opponent, devoid of sentiment. Our entire marriage, a source of intelligence for her. "Do you feel any remorse, Brenda May?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She met my gaze, her expression hardening. Remorse is a luxury, Frank. A weakness. I got things done for my client, for the city. I reached into my inner jacket pocket, pulling out a folded document. The paper crackled faintly in the quiet room. I slid it across the table. This is a warrant for Leo Garcia, Brenda May. He's been found, and he's ready to testify. Her gaze dropped to the document, then snapped back to mine. For the first time, her composure cracked. A flicker of genuine fear, or perhaps despair, crossed her eyes, quickly masked but undeniable. The game had changed. Brenda May's eyes, fixed on the warrant, held that momentary flicker of fear before stealing over once more. The room was silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. My words, delivered earlier, hung in the air. He's been found, and he's ready to testify. The carefully constructed edifice of her defense, of her life, had begun to crack. Brenda May, I said, my voice cutting through the quiet, I have enough evidence to arrest you. Obstruction of justice, tampering with a witness, conspiracy to commit fraud. It's all there. The list of charges felt stark, brutal in the intimate setting of our dining room. Her posture shifted, a subtle slump of the shoulders. She looked up, her gaze now desperate, searching for an angle. Frank, wait. Don't be a fool. Sterling has other dealings. Far bigger than this. Corrupt land deals, kickbacks on city contracts, even campaign finance violations tied to national figures. I know it all. I can give you everything. A bigger fish, Frank. Imagine the headlines. You could take down half the state legislature. She spoke quickly, her voice betraying a hint of panic. It was a desperate attempt to negotiate, to leverage her knowledge for leniency. The temptation was real. The ambition, the satisfaction of dismantling a larger web of corruption flickered within me. But the cost, her actions had already tarnished my reputation, dragged my integrity through the mud. To compromise now, to make a deal with her, would be to betray everything I stood for. No, Brenda May, I said, my voice firm, extinguishing the flicker of a larger case. This case is about justice, not about political scorekeeping. And your actions have already made it impossible for me to compromise on this. The DA's office is prepared to move forward. Her desperation gave way to a cold defiance. She rose from the table, her chair scraping loudly on the hardwood floor. You want to pursue this, Frank? Go ahead. You prosecute your own wife, and you watch your own career burn. You'll be a pariah, a single-minded crusader with no judgment. No one will ever trust you again. Her words were a venomous promise, a clear statement of the scorched earth strategy she would employ. I felt the immense weight of my decision, a leaden ache in my chest. I was sacrificing my marriage, my personal life, and potentially my entire future for an unwavering belief in a system that often felt indifferent. The irony was not lost on me. The next morning, the full damning case against Brenda May sat on Roy Campbell's desk. Greg and I presented it with grim determination. Campbell read through the summary, his face paling, the sheer scale of Brenda May's calculated deceit visibly shaking him. He rubbed his temples, the political fallout already weighing heavily on him. My God, Frank, he muttered, the headlines will be catastrophic. Greg, who had watched my relentless pursuit, simply nodded, a reluctant admiration in his eyes. He didn't miss a single thing, Roy. It's airtight. The DA's office moved quickly. The news of Brenda May Holloway, prominent political consultant and wife of Prosecutor Frank Holloway, facing charges of obstruction of justice, broke like a dam. The media frenzy was immediate and overwhelming. My phone began to ring incessantly. Journalists, friends expressing shock, colleagues offering condolences or caution. Sarah, I instructed my secretary, field all calls. Tell them I'm unavailable for comment. All inquiries should go through the DA's press liaison. I needed to maintain my focus, to remain detached, professional. But the isolation began to set in. The walls of my office, once a place of purpose, now felt like a cage. The personal cost of my integrity, of my unyielding pursuit of a black and white truth, was becoming acutely clear. I had once sought clarity, an unambiguous moral ground. Now I had it, but it was mixed with the bitter taste of personal destruction, a sacrifice I knew I would have to live with. The hammer fell with swift, brutal efficiency. Brenda Mae Holloway was formally arrested at her office, a scene that exploded across local and national news channels within hours. The carefully cultivated narrative she had tried to build, Frank Holloway, the overzealous, vindictive prosecutor, collapsed under the weight of her own scandal. The cameras flashed, the headlines screamed, and the public, ever hungry for drama, devoured every detail. Charles Sterling's campaign, already reeling from the previous whispers of corruption, was thrown into complete disarray. His poll numbers plummeted, his political future now hanging by a thread. The dominoes once set in motion were falling fast. I endured intense media scrutiny. Journalists camped outside my office, calls inundated my desk, and my face, once familiar only to local legal circles, was now splashed across every screen. I was painted simultaneously as a hero of justice, a man willing to sacrifice everything for the law, and as a heartless husband, a man who betrayed his vows for ambition. The dichotomy was unsettling. A public statement was required. I stood before a bank of microphones, the harsh lights blinding, my words carefully chosen, each syllable weighed for its impartiality. The district attorney's office, I stated, my voice steady, operates under the fundamental principle of the rule of law, applied without fear or favor. No individual is above the law, regardless of their position or connections. I avoided direct mention of Brenda Mae, focusing instead on the independent nature of the prosecutor's office, the unwavering pursuit of justice. Greg Johnson stood beside me, a silent, unyielding presence, acting as a buffer, fielding the more intrusive questions about my personal life. He steered the conversation back to the legal details, the evidence, the integrity of the process. D.A. Campbell, looking haggard, followed my statement with his own, publicly supporting the office's actions. But later, in the quiet of his office, he didn't mince words. "This is a mess, Frank, a goddamn mess. The political fallout is going to be immense. I hope you know what you're doing." His support was reluctant, born of necessity rather than full approval. Ostracization began almost immediately. Invitations stopped coming. Calls from longtime political contacts went unanswered. Brenda Mae's powerful network, the very people she cultivated, now saw me as a threat, a pariah. The social circles we once navigated together had closed ranks. Then a sterile, cream-colored envelope arrived at my office.